Right.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Helen Sarita, and you are in the Mother Eagle Blossoms Show. Greetings to all. A pleasant morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you. It is 5:12 p.m. here in the Philippines and 11 a.m. in South Africa, where today's guest comes from. It is so lovely to know the difference of time from the Philippines to any part of the world because of this platform. But before that, may I introduce you all our guest by reading his bio. Okay, I'm going to read his bio. Uh, doc- our guest for today is a doctor, is a medical doctor, a graduate of Natal University in South Africa. He is the recipient of the Olive, Schreiner, and Nadine Gardemore Prizes for Prose. His poems have been published in India, the United Kingdom, the USA, Australia, and South Africa, and soon to be published here in the Philippines. His book of liberation poems, A Voice from the Cauldron, was published during apartheid in 1986. Some of his obras have been translated into Xhosa, Zulu, Tamil, Hindi, and Italian. He has been invited to speak at literary conferences at the Tübingen University in Germany, the Center for the Study of the English Language in Mysore, India, the University of Copenhagen in Denmark, and the Teachers College in Mauritius, the State University of Louisiana in the USA, and the Universities of Natal and Zululand in South Africa. Hello, Doctor. How are you?
Very well, very well. Just trying to get my books in order
Our guest
so that
is no other than
we don't have
Doctor.
any hiccups when I'm reading. Thank you very much for the privilege and the honor of reading my poetry, and I'm going to just do a little excerpt from my book of short stories as well. I'll just show that to you.
Wow.
Just a few lines, and the book was prescribed for matrics in South Africa, in actually KwaZulu Natal, which is the province where I live. And and I used to
Yes.
write a column for the Sunday Times newspaper, so that was also very exciting. But I think I'm most jubilant that you have given me this invitation and the privilege to address
I
you
have
and all the
promised
people
you
in the
a
Philippines
long
and
time ago.
internationally. Right, right. Okay.
So welcome to our show,
Yeah,
Dr. Deena Padayachee.
Padayachee.
Paya, Pada, Paya, Padayachee.
Padayachee.
Yeah.
That's right. Good.
Padayachee. I hope I
Yes,
pronounced
yes.
it correctly.
You did, you did.
Thank you, thank you. So it's so exciting to have you here, Doc. And
Yeah.
on your Facebook profile, you stated there that you are doing professional locums exclusively for family practitioners. What do you mean by
Yes.
that?
Well, what happened was a few years back, because of my age and my health, I decided not to do full time medical practice and instead help doctors out who needed a break from practice, who needed to go on holiday, who perhaps might be sick, might have family issues. So then they would call me in to work in their surgeries. So I had a wonderful time working full, it was virtually full time again, but it was very, very good working in different practices and making a difference to the lives of patients, But what
Yeah.
happened is when COVID came in 2020, and we didn't have a vaccine. And then because of my health issues again, I decided I'm not a young person anymore, that it would be dangerous to continue working. And
Yes.
so I actually decided to stop working and only do what we call virtual consults, which means that patients would contact us on WhatsApp and then they would phone us, and then I would, discuss their ailment with them and guide them as to what to do next.
It's a
And
kind
so
of online checkup, Doc. Is that so?
that's right. That's right. And
Okay, we
then
call that
I'm
online
still,
checkup
I
here.
yeah, I'm still right, and I'm still doing that now. And I must say, it's very, very enjoyable, very, very pleasant. And I
Yes,
am,
you are very safe with
and
that.
yeah, and we have a law in South Africa that you have to attend at least 30 lectures every year in order to keep your registration alive as a medical
Okay.
doctor. So that is the law for doctors, physiotherapists, accountants, teachers, but
Not only to
lawyers.
doctors.
Yeah, it's not only the doctors, but the lawyers are very blessed. They make the laws, and they have decided they don't need to attend lectures.
Wow, that's nice. That's a big
Yeah,
privilege.
yeah, but
And
I personally, I would not like to practice medicine if I was not in a doctor's group where we
yes,
exchange ideas and knowledge, and also if we don't update ourselves. Because just to give you an example, when I qualified as a medical doctor, and I qualified a long time ago, I think before you were born, in 1977, and and so
no, I was
um,
like already 77. So
oh,
it's
okay, you look
12 years.
very
I was
young.
12-year-old.
Okay, you look very young. So what happened is in when I qualified, there was no HIV, no AIDS disease, no obviously no COVID-19. So doctors have to learn about new diseases, and they also have to learn about new treatments. So, for instance, the way we treated diabetes when I was newly qualified and how we treat now is like completely different. And the
Yeah,
same
the
for high blood
practice
pressure.
before is really different
Yeah, yeah. And we
compared
build
to
on that
now.
foundation. Yeah. So we
Because we
build
have
on
a
that
lot of,
foundation.
some newly discovered machines like that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, because
Like your
our
dialysis machine and
MRI
all that. Sure.
was not
Yes,
yet
yes.
before.
That,
Yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah.
that,
And
and
now
there are a lot
yeah,
more. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So do you consider yourself as like semi-retired now?
Yes, I am. I'm definitely semi-retired, so I can do things like this webinar. Previously I couldn't. There was no time.
Maybe it's not good also to quit drastically. That's you will not be into your doing your profession.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that's the
it's
life is
quite.
good now.
I find most doctors do not stop working.
Yeah.
They continue, being in touch, because what happens is if you spend your whole life thinking about something and working in that field, it's almost impossible to stop.
Yes, that's true. In any field,
Yeah,
I think, even you are just
yeah,
a storekeeper, a farmer, a traveler, you
yeah,
cannot stop what you're doing in
yeah,
just, drastic way. So,
yeah.
I just, you have a very fine poetry, and that depicts your
Thank you.
kind personality. Because what if your
Oh,
heart is good, of course, your writing is also good. So, when did you
thank you.
discover that you have a passion for writing?
In school. What happened was in primary school, I didn't know I had any kind of talent or gift, but what would happen is that the teachers would ask us to write compensation, they called it.
Yeah,
Composition, not compensation,
composition.
composition, English composition. And
When you
then
were at what age, though?
about 11, 12.
12 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
what would happen is the teachers, they would ask us to write composition in the class. So that way they knew it was our own writing. And then when I wrote, and then they would what they would do, they were very kind to me. They would read out my composition to the other children. And that was when I first realized that I could write.
Yeah.
And then and also because of their encouragement, At high school, we call it high school, secondary school, when
Yeah,
you're
same
about
here.
14, 15, the teachers again started passing me many compliments about my quality of writing. Also, I noticed, and this I think I have not really shared with anybody before, but I noticed that when I read literature, when I read English literature, I would often come up with insights about the writing that that the teachers were very pleased with. So I would see things in the writing of other people that they used to call it English comprehension. So I used to score very high marks in English comprehension because the teacher said that I was seeing things that many people didn't see. And up to today, I write movie reviews. So if like, for instance, I'm watching President Zelensky in a Netflix movie. It's called A Service. I'll WhatsApp, no, I'll message it to you, the exact name. It's called
Okay.
Service, something to do with service. But it is a brilliant movie. It's a series. Do you have Netflix, Helen?
Yeah, sometimes, but I don't
Yeah.
have time to watch.
Oh no, you
Sometimes I
must make time.
watch. Yeah,
You must make time because Zelensky, is obviously in the news now as president of the Ukraine,
but
and
I
yeah.
noticed that it consumed my time and I have a lot of things to do.
So anyway, so I have not done it yet, but I'm going to write a review of the series to alert my friends about Zelensky, because it gives you an idea about his background. He was an
Okay,
actor, he was a comedian, he was I think
that's
even a teacher
interesting.
of
That's
a
interesting.
teacher of history. I think he might have been a teacher of history because he plays a teacher of history in the series. And he
Okay.
plays somebody who becomes president of the Ukraine, and he has to deal with all the corruption in the Ukraine.
Oh,
And he eventually actually became the president of the Ukraine. So you see, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So like, for instance, I did a review of the movie Diana, which is about Princess Diana. You know, and other movies about Mandela and Steve Biko, who was a great hero of our country, and Gandhi, the movie. So I did a
yeah,
review
I
of
love
that.
that.
So
That's
yeah, so I want to put all that
very
into my new book.
interesting.
Yeah, and of course I've got these Sunday Times columns that I wrote a few years ago, so that'll go into it, and then poetry and short stories, and I also write a lot
You're
of
really so
satire.
good, doctor. I can say that your English is so clear. It's not for
Yeah,
hard for us to catch what you what you're saying about. So
thank
I
you. Yeah,
yeah,
but
you're so
but
clear.
thank you. But what I really like doing is writing satire.
Okay.
Yeah, so satire is where you take something that is happening and then you put a spin on it and you look at it from a humorous point of view. And at the same time you highlight flaws and inconsistencies and sometimes irrationality. So for instance, I wrote a little note which I will message to you. Excuse me,
Okay.
about how and this is complete fiction, but and my short stories have that kind of fiction in them, but it's about how the Vietnamese people are going to be approached to confer the title of honorary Vietnamese on the Ukrainians, because the brave Ukrainians are fighting off the invasion of the Russians the way the Vietnamese have been, in the 1960s, were fighting off invasion by the Americans. So now we call the Ukrainians, at least I call them honorary Vietnamese because of their
Okay.
great bravery.
Bravery.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And then I suggested that the Ho Chi Minh was the leader of Vietnam. So that Ho Chi Minh be given the title of his prize. He's passed away now, but the Ho Chi Minh Prize should be conferred on President Zelensky.
See. So I
Yeah.
saw your cover photo that you're with the very famous Mandela.
Yes.
How was it?
Yes.
How did you acquainted with him? He's the
Well,
president of first president of South Africa. Am I right?
that's right. The first president of democratic South Africa. During
Oh,
apartheid, anybody with my skin color was not allowed to vote. So
oh,
only Europeans were allowed to vote in South Africa.
that's
So what?
really discrimination of races.
Yeah, yeah. But that was the law, in South Africa for over 300 years. Where we had less human rights or no human rights. So, for instance, just to give you an idea, during apartheid, if they felt you were against apartheid, they could come and arrest you, and you did not even have access to lawyers. So they could detain you for 90 days or 180 days or longer, and they could also ban you. Now, that's important to understand. What they could do was pass a law, well, give you a directive that you aren't allowed to leave your house during the day. I mean, during the night. And also, you're not allowed to be in the company of more than two people.
You didn't have freedom.
No. And also, it's very important to understand that you were not allowed access to universities and schools because you were a danger to the minds of the people. Because if you went to the school and told the children that their parents were not allowed to vote and that they themselves are not allowed on the beach, by the ocean, then they would be apartheid government would be upset. So they tried to stop you from having access to schools and universities.
Everything.
Yeah. Now, to get
So
back to Mandela and
yeah.
how I met him, there was this patient of mine, a school principal called Mr. Mulchan. And I can send you the article I wrote about it. And so, anyway, he was my patient and his family, and so he was on the reception committee in Durban for Mandela when Mandela visited Durban in 1991. Now, Mandela was not at that time the president of South Africa, but he was
So
being
that
invited
photo
all
was
over the
taken on
world.
1991. That was
That's
taken
correct.
1991.
Yeah,
Long time
yeah.
ago. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
then,
because you were young. You're
yeah,
in that
yeah,
picture. I just
yeah,
grabbed
yeah,
it.
very young.
Yes.
Yeah, very young. And so when we met him at the airport and then we followed his car, there was a long procession of cars that went to the Durban City Hall. That's the city I live in, Durban. And then at the City Hall, Mr. Mulchan came to me and asked me whether I want to meet Mandela. So I
Wow.
went over to him and I chatted with him, and my camera didn't work as well. That was the other problem. The flash didn't work. And all we got was that one single picture, of Mandela and me. And
So that's the
so
one.
obviously, yeah. And, I'll tell you a story about this. It was fantastic meeting him because he had a charisma and he was very calm and peaceful. And, that was very
Really?
strange to me because, like most people in South Africa, we suffered a great deal during apartheid. And he suffered more than most people because he was incarcerated in Robben Island for 27 years, and he was tortured by the apartheid police. And you're separated from his wife and children. And when his father died, I think, or his mother, I think it was his mother. When his mother died,
He
he
was
couldn't attend the
already a
funeral.
president on that picture that you were with him.
No, 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 he
No,
wasn't the
because he
president.
was president 1994, I think, to
That's
1999.
right.
That was
Yeah, 1994.
1991. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he was very calm and peaceful, and that really impressed me because there was no bitterness in him, no bitterness at all. And then he asked me, "How are you?" You know, and I looked at him and I didn't know what to say because how do you answer a question like that? And so I chatted with him for a few minutes, and I gave him a copy of a book which had my writing, and it was a book which had a short story about the Gandhi ashram in Nanda in Durban. And so I gave it to him as a gift. And then obviously we had shaken hands. So many years later, not too many years, maybe about 10 years later, I was invited to Denmark. And then I was invited to a school in Denmark. I spoke at the University of
That was in
Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
Yeah, in Copenhagen. And I was invited to a school in Copenhagen. What had happened was a teacher at the school who didn't have my address details had taken a short story I wrote called A New Woman in Town and put it in his own book of South African short stories. I didn't know anything about it. So it was a book in English, and his name is Cooper, Alan Cooper. So my host in Denmark, who was a poet, asked me to get in touch with Cooper, gave me his telephone number. So I phoned Cooper. Cooper invited me to school because Cooper was a teacher at the school. So I get over to the school, and then I gave a talk on my book of short stories and my poetry, and I did some readings. So then he what you call it, the children came over to me after that, the young people, and they all started, talking to me, asking me questions and all that sort of thing. And then one very beautiful girl looked at me and asked me, have you ever met Nelson Mandela? And I told her, I gave her some of the detail I've just given you. So then and then I said, I even shook his hand. And then she did something which was so beautiful. She grabbed my right hand and shook it and said, now I'm not going to wash my hand.
I am having goosebumps. I feel that he has a magic.
Yes, absolutely. He had an incredible magic, incredible love within him, incredible kind of person.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
has
yeah.
the, spirit that we cannot, an enigma, we can't explain.
Yes, yes, yes. But we were very blessed that he was born in our country.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he passed away in 1913
No,
or
2013.
no,
2013.
sorry, 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Very memorable event in your life that you have met him
Yes, yes.
in person, and you
Yeah.
have photo with him.
Yes, yes, yes,
So that's
yes.
very interesting. Well, I saw some of the comments that you're so lucky to have a photo with him, to have taken a
Yeah,
photo. Then let's
yeah.
talk about our common friend, Mr. Govinda Biswas.
Oh,
How you became
yes.
friends with him? He's a very nice guy.
Yeah, I was very blessed and fortunate. He's invited me on Sunday again to take
Yeah,
part in a
I
poetry recital.
was also invited. That would
Yeah,
be on Sunday, right? Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, he's such a um, sincere person, with so much integrity, and so
so
he's invited me
friendly.
many
So
times. Yeah,
friendly.
and he's invited me subsequent to the Philippine conference I took part in. He's invited me to many conferences, many, many,
Yes.
and he's also done a Facebook Watch interview. He's done it twice with me. The
Yeah.
first time it didn't come out properly, so he did it again. And because of the exposure and publicity he's given me,
Yeah.
I've now got in touch with many other groups. So many
Yes.
other groups now are in touch with me, and one person, one journalist, actually did quite an extensive interview, and he put the interview on Facebook, not on YouTube.
In YouTube. This
Yeah.
interview also
So
will be on YouTube.
yeah. So I haven't learned how to do that myself, but obviously my friends are pressing me to do it myself because, the technical aspects are a problem for me. So I will still have to learn how to do it and then start
I
reading my poetry
understand.
on,
I
on YouTube,
understand.
because also at my age now, I must start doing that kind of thing so that my children and, other people will have some kind of legacy to look at. There's nothing like the
That's
poet
true.
or the writer himself doing readings on YouTube, which is, I find YouTube an absolute blessing. YouTube, Facebook, WhatsApp, I have learned such an incredible amount. And Helen, if you don't mind, I'm just going to share this with you
Okay,
about the,
sure.
the difference that Facebook and WhatsApp has done for me, and YouTube. What happened was a friend of mine sent me a video of
Okay.
Charlie Chaplin. It was an excerpt. It's called "The Greatest Speech That Was Ever Written." So Charlie Chaplin is known as a comedian, all right, as a clown.
Okay.
So, but this video was in color, and it was him speaking, and he's an actor, and it's called The Great Dictator. It's a movie called The Great Dictator. I had never heard of this movie ever in my life, right? So yes, me looking at this video and the things that Charlie Chaplin is saying in his speech are so wonderful and so great that I was completely taken away. I was totally, it's still, I think, one of the best films I've seen in my life.
Okay.
In the same league as Gandhi, the movie, or Diana,
Yes.
or any of the other great movies like the Zelensky series I'm watching, which I think is another great example of how film can transform people. So
Yes. I agree with that.
unfortunately, Charlie Chaplin was harassed by the government in his time, and they thought, I don't know what they thought, but anyway, he was forced into exile, and he ended his life in Switzerland. And even now, you can't get The Great Dictator. I went and hired the video from a video store about 10 years ago. Now there's no video stores because everything is streamed live, by from Netflix and American Prime and that sort
Yes.
of thing. So, but I was fortunate; I saw the whole movie, and I wrote to Netflix and I suggested to Netflix that they get The Great Dictator to be part of the offerings on Netflix, but it hasn't happened as far as I know. You know,
Maybe
so
soon.
and then yeah, but you see, I grew up in apartheid where we were restricted from information. So we didn't know too much of the rest of the world. We knew about Europe. We were taught in school about Europe. We were taught about South Africa from the Europeans' point of view, not our point of view. Right. So our textbooks would talk of people who are like me as a problem. Can you imagine being referred to as a problem in your own native country? I mean, I was born in South Africa. My ancestors from 1860 lived in South Africa. They were brought to South Africa by the British Empire to work in sugarcane fields. They didn't bring us here to come become doctors and anything else or professors or whatever. And certainly they didn't like anybody to become an author because we would expose too much. But anyway,
Yeah.
the other book that was fascinating and transformed my life, and I only learned about it about 4 or 5 years ago. It's a book called let's see, by Shashi Tharoor, right? And he was a member of, he still is a member of parliament in India, and he was interviewed at the Oxford Union. He took part in a debate about the interaction between India and Britain. Britain ruled India for more than 100 years, and what effect that had on India. You know, so I had been looking for that information for most of my life. All right, but I couldn't get it. I went to India. There's a road called Mount Road in a town city called Madras. It's now called Chennai. And I went from one end of the road to the other end of the road in all the bookshops, and I couldn't find a book giving me the kind of information that Shashi Tharoor gave me in his book. And it's called Inglorious Empire. Inglorious Empire.
Inglorious
So
Empire.
yeah. So when I heard about the book, again through Facebook and through WhatsApp, I ordered the book because I couldn't get it in South African bookshops, right? And then finally, a friend of mine from England was coming through to South Africa, and he brought a copy for me. But then subsequently, the book has been sold in South Africa, but I still think it's a difficult book to get hold of. So most South Africans have never heard of this book and don't know the information in this book. So just to give you an example of the kind of information
I
shared,
love your
he said that
passion
when
with, history.
yeah, So
Because
when
you
Britain came
really
to,
give time, you really travel in order to, to search those things.
yeah, and I share that all the time. That's why I asked you to join WhatsApp.
Yeah, that's it.
Because then
I
I can.
already joined, but the phone that I was using for the WhatsApp got lost. So
Oh, shame.
yeah, but I
You
have
can you
to,
can you can rejoin.
yeah, I can
Because
rejoin anytime.
yeah, yeah. So
So
sorry, I must just share with you this information. When Britain came to India, according
okay.
to British authors, British academics, they said India had about 20% of the gross domestic product of the world. Now, the reason why the British and other Europeans like the Dutch and the Portuguese came to India was because of the wealth of India. Now, I couldn't understand why India is still so poor, comparatively, right? So I needed to understand why, because the Indians I knew in South Africa were people who were highly intelligent, and they were very hardworking, and very driven for
Yes,
success
and
and
they're
looking
very
after.
very sharp.
Yeah, and looking after their families and that sort of thing, and very patriotic. So what happened was i
Yes,
i
you
needed to
are.
understand what had happened to India. And according to Shashi Tharoor, and he quotes the sources, again British sources, where he says that the gross domestic product of India had dropped to less than 10% of the gross. I'm being conservative, but from 20% it dropped to less than 10% of the world's gross domestic product. All right, and the literacy level also was only about 18% when the British left South Africa.
So,
And what the British did was they grew opium in a state called Bihar, which they had conquered in India, and then they sold it in China, right? And the Chinese people started becoming opium addicts. So the Chinese government tried to stop the sale of opium in China. And when the Chinese government passed those laws, the British government declared war on China in 1842. And the British government fought two wars to force the Chinese government to allow the sale of British opium in China,
so
and it's that kind
legally.
of, yeah. And it was, such a terrible thing to do to any other country. And this is the kind of information that most of the world doesn't seem to know about. And certainly in South Africa, if you speak to most South Africans, they'll think you mad. They'll think, they won't believe it, you know. But there
Yeah.
are obviously books and pictures and articles which you can
That
source.
can prove it.
Yeah. So I find a lot of South Africans very parochial. They're very sort of, because of their education and South African media and their exposure, they
Yeah.
know very little about the history of the world, and they
Yes,
don't
yes.
understand a lot of things. So I personally get into trouble with some of them
That
because when
is
I say
why it
something,
is very
they don't
important
believe me.
to, it's very important
Yeah.
to read books.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's true. So, do you remember, Dr. Dina, that when you guested in the Filipino Poets and Blossoms
Yeah.
Festival, remember
Yeah.
during my birthday, we all found
Yes.
you are so very nice person, and
Oh,
all of
thank you.
us actually appreciated your, a kind being. What was
Thank you.
your unforgettable experience at that event, and how did you find it? How was it
Oh,
for
that
you?
was wonderful. That was the best thing. I've taken part in poetry webinars, international ones in America, and obviously I've read my poetry and short stories in Germany and Denmark and Trondheim in Norway and in America itself at the State
Yeah.
University of Louisiana. But this was incredible. Your Philippines experience. You know what I really loved was the empathy you showed, the hospitality, the kindness, and you made people feel welcome. Now it's quite a daunting experience to share your writing with people from a different country, because you don't know whether they can relate to what you say. Whether they like the kind of information that you are sharing, whether they because the most important thing in
Yes.
writing
I was
is
just so lucky
vocabulary.
that everyone, every guest were so nice also. Were so kind,
Yes.
good, great also.
Right, right. But we really appreciate, I think all of us appreciate the way y'all do these things, you know? And I just want to share a thought about poetry and writing in general. The most important thing, and you writing in a foreign language, I don't know if English is your native language. Is it your native language? Do you think in English? Do you
No,
write
we
in English?
have our own, native language, and
Yeah,
Filipino have different dialects. I
right, right.
speak with my own native dialect, not Tagalog or Filipino. So
Tagalog. Do you speak
ta-
Tagalog?
ta- yeah, I can, of course. I can, but it's not
Right,
my
right.
native dialect or
Yeah,
language.
yeah. I must tell you about this. I
Yeah.
met a Filipino for the first time in my life in America, right?
Oh,
In
okay.
Los Angeles. And my brother and I were doing a tour, and I met him. This is before I got married. And we met, his name is Fortunato Tolentino, right? And so we
Okay.
chatted, about,
That's a
and
Filipino
this was
name.
Yes, this was in the 1970s. So
Okay.
unfortunately, we lost contact. So I went
Oh,
on Facebook and I typed his name,
yeah.
and I couldn't find him. So I hope that, through this interview and maybe on YouTube,
Hopefully,
he might just,
hopefully,
yeah,
yeah.
we might make
Fortunato
contact. But
Tolentino.
yeah, and that's how, he told me about Tagalog and the language that you all speak. And of course, the
Oh,
other thing is,
really?
there are movies on Netflix which are about the Filipino liberation struggle against the Americans. So when the Americans conquered the Philippines, there were two brilliant movies. The one is called Luna, and it talks about the Filipino soldiers. And then
Yes.
Luna is followed by, I think, another movie where it's another person who led the rebellion against, or the fight for freedom against the Americans. And it was, for somebody like me, it was just fascinating, because it gave me a lot of insight into the Filipino culture and the way the Filipinos looked at war, and also their domestic lives, and the infighting, because a lot of the trouble that happens when a country is conquered is because the people are not united. So instead of fighting the common foe, they fight each other. So that happened in India, and it also happened in the Philippines.
That's true. That's why I thought of making an anthology with different authors from different countries about unity.
Right, that's a great
Yes.
idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the other thing
So
is to do an anthology about love.
yes, we do that in the Filipino Poets and Blossoms,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe
So
worldwide
yeah.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was included in some,
I have to
romantic
include you.
anthologies.
I will
Yeah,
invite you if ever.
so thank you. So for me, that was a great thing, to be included in that way,
Thank you for the
because,
interest, Doc. So,
but in South
so since
Africa,
you
we
are
were often
now
excluded.
semi-retired, are you planning to focus on your passion for poetry or whatever? What
Yes,
is
I'm
your
doing that
plan?
all the time. I'm doing that all the time now. Writing every day. Writing short stories, writing poetry, and I constantly come up with all kinds of ideas. And one of the ideas I'll share with you, because I feel very strongly about human rights, and I write a lot about justice. So the rights of the
Yes,
lady and the
yes,
rights of the children are paramount, and we create the future by the kind of children we leave behind. So I've written about, mainly about ladies,
yes,
and one of
Doc.
the things I've written about ladies goes like this: when we look at the man, okay, the macho man, the strong man,
Yeah,
do we ever think about the lady who gave him birth? you know because without that lady, he wouldn't be there.
that's true.
you know so
Yeah,
we have to acknowledge the lady, and that's where the man's responsibility is critical. He
woman
has
has to
to,
be
uh,
respected.
yeah, the woman's the respect for the lady has to be told to the babies, to the little children. You
It should
have
be
to
holistically.
constantly, yeah, so you don't run down the lady in front of her children. You don't make her feel bad in front of the children. If there's any discussion, it must be done away from the children, because the children learn bad habits about disrespect from the way the parents behave.
For me,
So
Doc, that's the real macho man. If you respect
yes,
a woman with all your
yeah,
heart, that's the
yeah,
real macho man, not just the muscle that he has.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so true. I want to quickly read a poem about
Yes, please do,
a,
please do.
a romantic poem about which was inspired by Pablo Neruda. I think he's a Chilean poet. So Pablo Neruda wrote, "In one kiss, you'll know all I haven't said." So that's his little poem. In one kiss, you will know all I have not said. So my poem goes like this: in one glance, you will know how I feel. In one smile, my soul will speak to you. In my eyes will dance the sparkle and the ecstasy of your life.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
So a beautiful tribute for a woman.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So is there a poem that you have the one you have shared with me? It was a sad poem about the lady who's being
Yes.
molested or what,
She was murdered.
being murdered.
Yeah.
Do you have a
Yeah.
copy there?
Yes, I've got a copy. So I'll read that now. It's
Yeah,
called For
please.
Riva. For
Yeah.
Riva. And well, you've got the picture on your messenger. So in some way,
Yeah.
it'll be nice if you could share that when you do the YouTube. But
Yeah.
she's so beautiful. She was only 30 years old when she was murdered by her lover. So and she was a
So
lawyer. She
she's
was a
not
qualified
married
lawyer.
yet. She's not married
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah.
So the one
And
who
it
murdered
happened.
her was her lover?
Yes, on
That's
Valentine's Day.
sad. Valentine's
On
Day.
Valentine. Yeah, yeah.
What a
And
sad thing.
her name was Riva Steenkamp, and the man who murdered her is called Oscar Pistorius. You know, so the trial was broadcast on our television, and we watched it all the time, and we would be discussing it all the time, because there was the defense lawyer who was very good, and then there was the prosecutor who was also very good, and the judge, Judge Masipa, and she was making decisions. And so anyway, I wrote this poem, and it goes like this: for Riva, for
Okay.
her, for her, for the lady who should be laughing and happy today, for the lady who should have been savoring her life, for the lady who should have been able to look forward to the rest of her life, to loving her own husband and her own children and her own family, for yet another glow of love which has been extinguished in this land of so much hate. For her, I write these words on another South African morning, a morning she was not allowed to see. I have this awful image inside my head of this delicate, young, once happy, beautiful, and delightful lady screaming and fleeing in terror from a raging, gun toting, bionic male in the early hours of perhaps the most romantic morning of them all. I have this image of her cowering in the toilet as she tries to summon help via a mobile phone. She screams as the first bullet shatters her right hip, but the brute is without pity. He blasts away remorselessly. He executes her with three more bullets, and she dies. She deserves justice. South Africans
Yeah.
steal the lives of others far too easily. It happens day after day, night after night, week after week. We hear of our fellow human beings being brutalized and murdered, and we do not know what to say anymore to these savages. But we should know what needs to be done. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really brutal. You
Yeah,
know that
yeah,
it's a devil work that was who took her life.
yeah, yeah,
It's so
yeah,
sad. And
Yeah,
it should be, there should be justice for her.
yeah. And I believe that in school, the children must be taught about respect for the lady.
That is very important, though, the values that we
It,
have to
it must
instill to our young ones.
at school. A lot can be done to turn children into
Yes,
good adults. But we waste that opportunity in South Africa. We don't make proper use of it. We teach them arithmetic, mathematics, geography,
yes, but
history.
not
Well,
really,
yeah, yeah. Well, actually, history is not taught in South
it has to
Africa.
be
They're just
absorbed
starting.
100% to the
Right.
young minds.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also the marriage, because there are a lot of broken marriages. Maybe there's something to,
Yes.
not just a 3 days a seminar. We need to, even if you are not yet you are not getting into marriage, you need to, single people has to know, we have to know about the consequences of married
And the
life,
responsibilities.
the
We marry when we are
responsibilities.
too young, and we don't understand the
Yeah,
responsibilities. That
so
that that is critical. And in certain religions, like the Christian religion, they often prepare the couple for marriage. But in some of the other religions, that's not really done in a proper, organized manner. And I think marriage should be taught to children at school, at
yes, I think
like when they
so.
when they're
Not
about 16 or
only to, yeah,
17, because most people get married, but they're not
yes,
taught about marriage at school. And
that's true.
so that is actually, that would be very nice if they started doing that.
It's very important because you start your life in a family.
Yes,
You will be
yes,
right under your parents,
yes,
um, rule. So it's very important to know how to deal with children, because
yes,
they will be growing, that they have instilled goodness, kindness, or whatever values to
yeah,
their minds.
right.
That's so that's it takes a lot of time. We need to, there are a lot of, we need to enhance our way to a
Yes,
better, for a better tomorrow.
absolutely.
Doc, do you have a plan to publish books, more
Yes, I
books?
do. Well, poetry doesn't really sell. So I'm thinking of combining the poetry with, short stories and,
Yes,
like
yes,
sayings.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. It's
yeah.
very important so
So
that
that,
it will not be boring to read, because not all people love
right,
poetry. So
that's
it
right.
should be inspiring to all. It doesn't need that all is about poetry. You have to mix with other, short
Yeah.
stories, inspirational
I must,
stories.
I wrote a poem called Homemakers. And this poem is about how, during apartheid especially, the ladies were central to our survival and our progress. Because without the lady being chaste, you know the word chaste, chaste,
Yeah,
and being a mother and a homemaker at home, then the children could never flourish. They could never make progress. And the man obviously could not make progress. So you need the right kind of lady at home who keeps the home together no matter what happens. And we were very blessed in my childhood that we had very strong ladies, very, what we call centered ladies. They were rooted in their religion, rooted in loyalty, and that kind of thing. So I'll just read a few lines from this poem, which has
please
been
do.
published by
Yeah,
a magazine called Glow Mag, in India. And the most important thing was that those ladies helped us to resist apartheid. You know, so the poem is called Homemakers. They were homemakers, never home wreckers, the ladies of my childhood. They nurtured everything: children, flowers, gardens, homes, even errant husbands. Ah, the ladies. Their benign wisdom ensured that everything blossomed. They wasted nothing. They valued everyone. Sari-clad goddesses, they understood our weaknesses. They helped us overcome our silliness. They loved us no matter what. They accepted us, wanted us, needed us, never undermined us, no matter what. They sustained us while everywhere, along with the respect, we knew legal rejection, rudeness, and racism. Their elegance matched the dignity of their homes, homes which knew the impermanence inflicted upon them by the Group Areas Act. I'm going to stop there. I'll just tell you what the Group Areas Act was all about.
Thank
Um,
you for the respect for women, though.
thank you, thank
You're
you. The
such a
Group Areas Act
wonderful
was,
man. You're such so
thank you,
gentle.
thank you,
Yes.
thank you. That's kind of you to say that. You
So
know, yeah, let me explain the Group Areas Act. This was a law that the apartheid government passed, which forced people to live in segregated areas. So Europeans were only allowed to live with Europeans, Indians only with Indians, Africans with Africans, and people of mixed race had to go and live in another separate area. So, we were all separated in this way, And I wrote a poem about teachers and as a poem of gratitude to teachers. And if I may, I'll just read you a few lines of my tribute. It goes like this.
please do,
Uh,
please.
Thanks. Luminous gurus of light, passionately imparting the tools of survival. Our educators enabled us to fight against and survive the ceaseless apartheid onslaught. They were the selfless, caring catapults that launched us in our war against the fascist shackles. Hounded by spies and informers, our teachers still dared to support us, to speak the truth, to tell us of decolonized curricula. They were demoted, defamed, and demonized. The educators still put us and their country before themselves. They were tortured and tormented, harassed and humiliated, but they still devoted their lives to the liberation of their country. They transformed crushed, brainwashed zombies into kernels of resistance. The apartheid laws and our educators were the catalysts for the shattering of Mandela's shackles, for democracy to dawn at last in our native land, South Africa. Thanks.
Very nice, very nice. So to do that, we are not we don't need to be selfish. We have to be
Yeah,
selfless in this endeavor, because if we
absolutely.
only think ourselves, that will never happen.
Right, right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
thank you so much, Doc. I am so happy, and I am so grateful that you are my guest for today, and I hope you
yeah,
enjoy our conversation.
I
I
did. Sorry, Sarita, can I just ask you to allow me to read a few lines from my book of short stories?
yes, please do, Doc.
This is a book of short stories. It's called What's Love Got to Do with It? It's 10 short stories about South Africa. And this book was prescribed for young people for matrics in my province, KwaZulu Natal.
Please do.
Okay,
That's very
so
interesting, Doc. Please
yeah,
read some
yeah.
lines.
So this short story is about how during apartheid, the local school where I grew up in Amshlali was for Europeans only. So the young people in the area, my father was not yet married, and all he had was a standard 4, which is grade 6. And my mother had not finished primary school, right? But well, my father, because he wasn't married at the time, he and his community donated the land for the school, and they actually built physically their own school. And that school is now named after my grandfather, R.A. Padayachee. So
Wow,
that's the school
really?
my
So
brother and I,
how big it is, Doc? How big the land area?
not very big, and it had a soccer field, and it had a few classrooms, and the classrooms were constantly added on. and there was a shortage of classrooms. So this was done with the permission of the government. So my father took a delegation to the Department of Education, requesting their permission to build a school according to their specifications, and then the community had to maintain the school, and the teachers were furnished by the Department of Education. But it had to be an Indians only school according to apartheid law, and the
Okay.
teachers were all Indian. Okay,
Oh,
but
really?
we were very blessed. We had the best teachers, and one of the reasons why I'm a writer today
But the land was
and a
located
doctor
in
is
South
because of those
Africa.
teachers. Sorry?
The land was located in South Africa.
Oh yeah, near my home.
So there are a lot of Indians there.
Oh, about 1 million Indians live in South Africa.
I see, I see. Now I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We as I said, we were imported from India by the British Empire to grow sugarcane in South Africa in
Mm,
1860. Yeah.
1860. Okay.
Yeah. So this short story is called A Different Kind of Standard 4, and it's about my father and me having a conversation about how the school came to be built. So my
Okay.
father looked intently at me as he said, "Son, I think it's time for you to know more about your school and how it came to be built." In 1942, when we moved to this part of compensation from Tongaat, there was no school here. There was just a very deep growth of bush and trees. It was virtually a jungle. There were no roads, no tap water, no electricity. So we hacked out the roads from the bush. We found a spring and installed a water pump. Our pump still pumps water to the factory and all the houses around here. We made money in a very difficult way. We cut down trees all over Natal, ripped them here at our sawmill, as we still do, and we manufactured furniture. Interest rates were very high for us, and it was very difficult to get bank loans, but we had to use bank loans. So that's just a little excerpt I wanted to read. And then I wrote a short story about the Gandhi Ashram, which is located outside Durban in an area called Inanda. And on 9th of August 1985, I watched the ashram being destroyed by rioters who they basically didn't know what they were doing. So the police did not intervene, the police did not stop them. So, I wrote about that. I watched the destruction from a hill opposite the actual home, and the ashram. And I knew the place quite well because they had a free medical clinic. And when I was a medical student with a number of other medical students, we used to go there and work at the clinic. But there was his home there and his furniture and his sandals, his spectacles, his wife Kasturba's blouse, and her sari and that sort of thing. So I saw his bed and his furniture. So the place left a very deep impression on me. And when they destroyed the place, I felt shattered. I felt very upset, and so I wrote a short story about 6 months later about what happened in Inanda on the 9th of August 1985 at about 11 a.m. And I'm
Okay.
going to just read you the
Yeah,
concluding
yeah,
lines,
please.
just a few lines. There had always been a kind of unearthly peace in the old ashram, a kind of freshness, a crispness of the air that left you exhilarated. The peace seemed to suffuse you and calm you, no matter what the turmoil in your soul, till that day when we looted the place. Somehow, when that old man turned on his heel and strode off from the ashram, all the peace in the place seemed to leave with him. And I didn't feel like stealing after that. In fact, I felt quite miserable. I felt, God help me, like a horse in a fox hunt, like a bullet from a robber's gun. But I kept the old desk, and at times when I look long and hard at it, I think I can see the old man's face looking up at me, and his eyes seem bright with life. Now, to understand those lines, you have to understand that the narrator, the person who's writing, who's speaking, is actually a person who's busy destroying the ashram. He's tearing it apart, he's stealing because he finds the police will not do anything about it. And he's unemployed, he's poor, and while he's destroying the place, he meets an old man who's not interested in destroying the place, who's examining everything with a very loving hand. And he's a very thin old man with sandals, and he's holding a stick, which he doesn't really seem to need. And he opens a desk, and inside the desk, there's the autobiography of Gandhi, the book. So what I'm saying is that the conversation is between Gandhi, the ghost of Gandhi, and the looter, the person who's destroying the place.
Yeah, the police didn't intervene even to that
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Now
it's
I've
really good
overstayed my
to,
welcome.
yeah, it's really good to document all your experience, because
Thank you.
it will be a legacy.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, the privilege, and the invitation. It's very kind of you, and God bless you and all the people who watch this
Thank you,
video.
Doc.
And
Thank you.
yeah, and I wish you a long and happy life. Thank you.
Yes, likewise, Doc. And
Thanks.
before we end this interview, I'm preparing here because I want to advertise, because we do publishing books now. I'd like to
Yeah.
advertise the books that we are publishing. It's
Yes.
closing. I'm closing here. Um, I I just got so interested with your stories. That's why I was listening to you. So you know, concentrating you. Okay, here
Yeah.
it is. Because we have published book with the Filipino authors from the Filipino
Right.
Poets and Blossoms. So I'm asking our viewers to please buy the books of Jake Morales named Mema, and then the collaboration by co-authored by 78 poets from the Filipino Poets and
Wow.
Blossoms,
Very
Filipinos
nice.
and from other countries. It's
Right.
available now, and it's very nice. And we have
Right.
coming Tala at Tula, meaning the list of, Tala means star. It could be like list, at Tula, and poems by Miss Dori Reyes Polo. She's a Filipina from Germany.
Right.
Uh, then Life 10 Fathoms Deep. It's a very nice book by Ma'am Susan Bilen. And we have Kastilyong Buhangin, Bangkang Papel by Sir Mr. Dionisio Vito. And from our English authors who they are from actually from West Africa. Liberia is located in the West Africa, Doctor.
That's right.
Yeah,
Liberia was an American colony.
yeah. We have Gabriel Weya, her Histories of Struggle in Africa, and Dr.
Right.
Philip. He has a very beautiful story too. He was enrolled grade 1 at the age of 16, so he was having a hard life, but he's a doctor right now. Dr. Philip Swearaini, the pains, sorrow, and disappointment in marriage. So, I've got a lot
That's
of,
yeah.
lessons from this book. And
Mrs.
Unrestricted
Sancha,
Achiever.
could I just ask, could you show the pictures of the covers?
Yeah, I will send it
Covers
to
of the book.
you. I will send it to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you could
Yeah.
show it in this interview as well, so
Yeah,
people will see the covers.
in YouTube. So
Yeah, yeah.
Unrestricted Achiever is written by Mr. Samuel Tarmo, and he's an exchange student. Is now in, I think, Turkey. um he's a student, but then he never, for me, achieving his goal is, unrestricted. So it's a
Yes,
very good book also, because as we edit the book, we also give our insights. We're like reading Bible, that we give our insight, we share our insight, our reflection from that book. So the last one is Managing Your Mistake by Dr. Paulami Skyberry, their team lead. So there,
Lovely.
he's the one actually paying this book to us. So it's very, for me, it's a very great privilege to publish this kind of works, because this is a very beautiful books. So
Right.
hope to have yours also. If you can publish with us, we would be very
Yeah.
happy. And
Lovely.
of course,
Yeah.
we have coming, and we are doing now here in the Philippines a university. It's, you know, a part, mm, maybe his have an, what we call this, he's in the University of Iloilo Science and Technology University. They will be publishing with us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
I
can I just mention,
yeah,
that you know, your university is in the Philippines. I would love to be in touch with the academics in the departments of English literature at the universities, because you know, it would be very interesting if I could send them PDF copies of my book of short stories and
sure,
even the
sure,
poetry, and then
sure.
perhaps they could look at it, and then you know, perhaps, you know, they would have an interest
Yes.
in reading that kind of writing.
Yes, because you have a great, you know, books, your writings. It's very useful to the university, to the students as well,
Right. I
and to
hope
our
so. Yes.
Department of Education as well. So we'll try
Yes,
to
that would
connect
be
you
wonderful. Yes.
to the right person, to the right office. We'll do that.
Right. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
thank you so
All the
much,
best.
and it's my great pleasure to have you again. And I
Thank
hope
you.
that
I really appreciate it.
there will be more conversation. Maybe we can
Yes.
meet in a Gabenda's event this coming
Yes.
Sunday. That would be on Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, on Sunday.
So
Yes.
I hope
Yes.
I have time to be there, because I will be in another place again, because I kept
Yeah.
moving, I kept traveling. So I hope I can.
Right.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So Doctor,
Oh,
thank you so much again,
thank
and may
you.
God
I really
bless
appreciate
you
it.
and all
You
your
too. God
honor
bless
things.
you too. Thank you
Bye bye,
so
bye
much.
bye, Doc.
Right. Bye bye. Bye.